Cheaters never win by stealing time. Give the other man 2 minutes more.
He's not running against me.
Can I speak to that? When we did timekeeping for Frankel, at times we were rough with them, and I'll take the fall for that. But at times we gave them some extra. We did give some extra time as well. So I mean, in fairness, yeah, those sort of.
Okay.
The objective is graciousness. I'll only offer comment as MC is, and look, if we're going to talk about staying within budgets, time budgets count too. So, first question. I'll cede my question to the floor in the interest of not wasting any more time. First question right here.
One of the basic goals of the Tea Party is to get back to constitutional basics. Where in the Constitution does it allow the government to institute and maintain any of the programs that really are spoken about?
Where in the Constitution?
Let me repeat the question.
I'll repeat the question. You're saying with respect to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, where in the U.S. Constitution? Oh, that's I don't know. It doesn't exist now. Well, there's an old saying that the U.S. Constitution is what the Supreme Court says it is.
That is not true, because there's no check on the Supreme Court.
Well, that's the way, but I agree with you, but Social Security, in the wake of FDR's court packing scheme in 1937, Social Security was found to be constitutional. Well, so I don't think that I do
make mistakes. That is what those men in that packed court by your statement did.
Well,
the Tea Party is all about is bringing us back to constitutional basis.
1 minute question. Yeah, just 1 minute.
Okay. To quickly answer that, it shows that you can't rely on the Supreme Court in many matters. The changes are going to happen legislatively.
Question over here. Next question.
What happens if the Moody's or Standard & Poor's downgrade our bond rating by AAA to AA?
Interest rates may go up. I mean, usually, frankly, I think the rating agencies tend to be trailing indicators as opposed to leading indicators. I think the mortgage crisis, financial crisis showed that. I will say, though, that sometime, maybe it was earlier this year, in the not too recent past, a very interesting thing happened in the bond market. One day, the yield on bonds of 4 major corporations traded at a lower yield than U.S. government debt. Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, and I forget the other 2 corporations, but that is a very unusual situation, and I think it is a bad harbinger for the United States government for that to happen.
Could you give us a little background on yourself career-wise, and also do you have any military experience?
I have not been in the military, unless they used to call Arthur Anderson the Army, but no, I've not served in the military. I have a bachelor's degree. I was born and raised in Findlay, Ohio, graduated from high school in Ohio, bachelor's degree from Indiana University, MBA from the University of Chicago. I'm a certified public accountant in Virginia. I'm also a chartered financial analyst, and I have 2 business valuation designations. I do business valuation work with a consulting firm here in this area, specializing in media and telecommunications.
Back row.
If you were to be voted in as congressman, how do you feel about listening to the people, which is a big issue, versus your own more intelligent thoughts on any subject? I mean, how would you weigh that between what you hear the majority of the people saying and what you think is better?
I think people need to listen and be influenced by the people, certainly. But I think people are elected. They have more time to spend. It becomes their job to become educated on the issues, study them. They go to hearings, and they talk to people that you don't talk to, and they listen to people you don't listen to. So I think at the end of the day, this was structured as a republic, and I think as a part of that, people are elected to use their best judgment once they're in office. But certainly a part of that is listening to their constituents, and for that matter, others in our society.
So I'd like to, if all may, I want to bring my question back and forth because it's a combination of you were asking that. It's a very interesting question. So here's the question. You're going to the people's house. Congress is the people's house. It has no authority over judges. So the Senate lets him in, the President picks him, the Senate lets him in, and then we're stuck with him. Early in our republic, John Adams lost an election, and his Congress, it was his folks, packed the courts. Jefferson's people came back in, and what they turned around and did was they said, well, you packed the courts, but I'm going to defund them. So how do you feel about addressing the court situation from a congressional seat if you were put in office? And just for the record, for those who weren't here, this question was put to Congressman Wolf, and his answer was that he did not feel that was a purview by a member of the People's House. Didn't care.
No, I think that wasn't his answer. His statement was that there was bad problems with the judiciary.
He did,
but he would not file impeachment papers.
Not correct. Yes, that's correct. That's correctly said. Correct.
I don't know that there's a good answer to that question. I think that ultimately you're right. The Senate confirms judges, the U.S. House does not. And I think that at the end, of course, all that is being done is to approve funding. And I think that the funding has to be sufficient for the courts to operate in. It's certainly one of the valid functions of government is that there be a court system, and the funding has to be sufficient for the court system to operate efficiently for the benefit of society. Beyond that, I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Sure.
I asked Senator Hatch last week if President Obama had, in almost 2 years, committed an impeachable offense, to which he said no, but he added that never in the history of the country has there been a president who has so completely dismantled our American system in such a short time. So my question to you is, has President Obama committed an impeachable offense with some of the things he's done?
No, not in my opinion. No, I'm not going to sign on and say, because look, he's you know, we don't know. There are people who have, the people in this room largely agree on what the U.S. Constitution says. There are a lot of people out there who don't agree with us on the U.S. Constitution. So allow me to answer the question. What I'm saying is that there are differences of political opinion. There already is a multi-decade precedent for all of these things that I think are unconstitutional, but have been already deemed constitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court. For somebody to come in and then on top of these things that have already been deemed constitutional say, well, we're going to file impeachment papers on this person, it's not going to go anywhere, sir. It would be a complete waste of time. The thing to do is to vote this year and in 2012 to correct the situation.
He wasn't born in the United States. That's right.
If you're elected to Congress, you're representing a district in Northern Virginia, which benefits heavily from the federal presence and federal spending.
Right.
Within Virginia, Northern Virginia suffers because the majority of state spending is controlled by those outside of Northern Virginia. What would you consider as being appropriate for being delegated to the state responsibility, and how would you ensure that Northern Virginia receives its fair share of funding?
The congressman can't control what happens in Richmond, first of all. That, you know, ask that question to the delegate candidates and state Senate candidates. But with respect to what a member of the House of Representatives can control, I think that we ought to look to what I think, and I think people in this room think, the U.S. Constitution calls for. We ought to have an appropriate national defense to defend this nation and the people and property in it. We ought to have a court system. We ought to adjudicate disputes. We ought to, although it's mainly a state and local function, to protect people from being assaulted or robbed or injured from other people. So I think, but it should be a minimal government, and everything not enumerated in the U.S. Constitution for the federal government should go to state and local governments or the people.